In this fight to the bitter end, we are going to take our country back.
We need to march on the Capitol today, and we need to stand up for this country.
We're fighting for the future of this country.
We're going to keep fighting. And for you to keep fighting too.
Freedom isn't easy, but you know what? Imagine this. That you can go back home once we come to the hill.
Patriots here ready to fight, certainly have the back of the president. If you're going to be the zero and not the hero, we're coming for you, and we're going to have a good time doing it. Don't be suppressed. Don't be put in your corner.
We will not go quietly into the night. We will defend liberty.
Today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass.
Let's have trial by combat.
And I think in this White House, we're going to fight like hell. I'll tell you right now. We're going to the Capitol. You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength. We're going to have to fight much harder. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
And I can't find a seconder usually when I propose this, but I don't care. I don't need a seconder. My own opinion is enough for me. I have the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this can pick a number, get online, and kiss my ass.
Where representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed are greater than the legal services provided by other lawyers. I'm Harry Steele, backwoods Southern lawyer. Got my partners in crime with me today. Mr. Ripp, how are you?
Very good, very good.
And Mr. Russian, checking in. How are things at Houston?
You know, it's a beautiful day, and I'm just waiting for the newest version of Nuremberg to begin.
Well, we're going to take things out of order today. After that little video, Mr. Ripp is going to do his Ripp Report for us. So go for it, Mr. Ripp.
You can catch a Ripp Report on the rippreport.com or Ripp Report Facebook or Baldwin County, also the podcast. But the big lie got me to thinking about my personal experience since I've been around for 74 years. The big lie, Vietnam veterans were lied to by politicians. In 1968, it was the year Martin Luther King was assassinated, the same year Robert Kennedy was assassinated. In Vietnam, the Tet Offensive and the Battle of Khe Sanh claimed the lives of thousands of young men and women serving in the armed forces. The streets of our cities across the nation were experiencing demonstrations, riots, looting, and burning of draft cards. The United States was divided into two camps, those against the war and those for the war. Both camps believed in their heart of hearts that they were right. I was discharged from the Marine Corps in El Toro, California, after 13 months in Vietnam. Vietnam veterans coming home in 1968 had very little understanding as to the turmoil brewing among the citizens in the United States. Vietnam had no TV stations or daily newspapers, and everyone was just trying to stay alive. With my discharge in hand, I was escorted by military police to the Los Angeles airport, bound for Birmingham, Alabama. When the MPs picked me up, I got in the back of the Jeep alone, and I asked them, was it standard procedure for MPs to escort servicemen to the airport? The corporal turned to me and said that I must not know what's going on, and that they had direct orders not to discuss current events. When we got to the airport, the MPs drove straight through a private security gate, directly onto the tarmac next to my flight. By this time, I was confused, and I asked them, what the F is going on? They finally broke down and told me I would not be able to walk through the terminal because people would spit on me. I now knew why I was escorted, because if someone spit on me after 13 months in Vietnam, losing my first cousin and several friends in that monstrous war, I would have gone absolutely insane and done my best to beat the hell out of everyone in my path. Vietnam was a lie. Now, 52 years later, I see the government perpetuating yet another lie. So before you get so upset and pissed off that you're willing to burn down your own house, remember, you're not the first one that got lied to by your government. Politicians from both sides of the aisle have been lying to us for the years. It's in their DNA. It took years for the whole ugly truth to come out about Vietnam, but it's history now. It was a lie that cost 55,000 Americans their lives. I believe that honest and good Americans fervently believe the election was stolen. Why would they not believe it? The president said so, just like in Vietnam. Unlike Vietnam, those faithful to the president, beyond a fault, were incited to attack the Capitol, disrupting a city body of government while in session doing the people's work. That's called insurrection. Just like Vietnam, history will record the truth, and many people, months or years from now, will come to terms with being lied to. We're in the midst of a pandemic that will soon claim 400,000 lives. Some people thought that was a lie, a hoax. Lies and words matter. Those of us that use social media in any form need to be cautious with our posts and comments. They should not be false, inflammatory, speculative, or encourage violence. They should not perpetuate the lie, but seek the truth. You got it?
I got it.
Damn, Paul. That's powerful stuff.
Well, it's more powerful when it happened to you, and then it's like I'm saying, you look at what is going on. I don't think these people were all complete fanatics or anything. I think most of them probably really have bought into the lie. Why the hell wouldn't you? So the president told you that. It's the same thing that happened in Vietnam. But we don't seem to learn. I mean, we just, there's no middle ground. We just dig our hole and put ourselves in it.
So 21,000 National Guard troops are authorized in D.C. for the Biden inauguration. Of those, there are 250 soldiers from the Alabama National Guard, our fellow citizens who have to head off to D.C. to deal with this. Will the mob return? What say you, Mr. Rushing?
Well, first, a few comments about the National Guard. Just so, for information's, being a former reservist, you need to understand that people, men and women who serve in the United States Army National Guard, are soldiers. But they are not only riflemen, unlike Marines. There are plenty of people in the National Guard who play support roles, just like they do in the regular Army. And so when you find out that people from your state's National Guard are being sent to Washington, they're not just bodies being thrown into a meat grinder. I'm almost willing to bet that the 250 members of the Alabama National Guard who are being sent have been at the request of the Department of Defense because they fill a very particular role. And I doubt that it's riot police. It's more than likely logistical. Or they may be cooks. They may be supply personnel. They may be lots of things because there are lots of jobs in the military. For every one person holding a rifle in the military, there's 4 people behind them doing jobs to ensure that they get to do that. So don't be upset that your guardsmen are going to Washington, first and foremost. The military is a machine, and the machine has many moving parts. Second, I told my wife this last night, and I'll explain it to all of you viewers and listeners now. I'm more afraid of this mob now than I was on the 6th. That's because anyone with half a brain, literally anyone with half a brain, is looking around and seeing their compatriots and their co-conspirators being arrested by the FBI, facing massive jail terms. And even if you don't ideologically care about the huge implications of facing a federal jail term, you're looking at massive legal bills to keep you out of jail. And from the look, and I'll go ahead and say it, the financial demographic of most of these Trump supporters, they ain't got the money to pay Alan Dershowitz to keep him out of jail. So what you're going to see if there is another uprising are only the true believers, only the completely brainwashed, only the absolute vile cultists. And those people are the most dangerous, because the most dangerous person in the room is a man with nothing to lose, or woman.
What was the name of that cult that all the girls were branded and it was a bunch of celebrities? What was the name of that cult?
Oh, I don't remember the one that the Netflix documentary was about. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just say that your sister was in that cult. What would you do to get her out of that cult? What could you do to get her out of that cult? That's how I feel about these people who believe this Trump lie.
That's a good question.
Because they're our fellow citizens, man. 70 million of them.
I'm here to tell you.
The only thing you can do is push forward, man. It's the truth will come out. I'm telling you, just like everything else. That's what surprises me sometimes about politicians, about how brash they are, speaking at the moment and not thinking, well, in a week from now, I'm going to really look pretty stupid because it's all going to come out as a lie.
I'll tell you, I'll answer your cult question, Harry. My mother and father are members of that cult. Deep, dyed in the wool. And were their health better, they would very likely be in Washington for the inauguration protesting. There's nothing you can do. I've done everything a reasonable person is able to do, and the toughest decision I've ever had to make is that I had to stop. I had to stop because you can't. You can't convince someone that's in a cult through reason.
Well, I'm doing my damnedest. So this is not our opinion. This is a cartoon put out by the Alabama Media Group.
J.D. Grove.
But we do.
Yeah, that's J.D. That's my opinion. I'll raise my hand on it right now.
Well, there's some people that we supported on this list, and I'm sorely disappointed, and they won't get my support again. I can promise you that.
Well, let me tell you who's going to get a little bit of a spotlight on them. And I'll go ahead and leak this now. You can say you heard it here first. I hope you've paid more attention and have really been looking at the media with both sets of eyes, not just with your one eye. Mo Brooks is facing serious scrutiny.
You bet.
And if Mo Brooks, I'm going to say this, I would just not be shocked or awed if you saw Mo Brooks as the subject of a federal indictment in 2021.
Me either.
Just know that you heard it here first on the Backstory Podcast. Mo Brooks will have the big scarlet S and be indicted for sedition against this country.
Go back, Harry, to the cartoon. What people should realize is, look at who is involved here. How in the hell do you think that is going to help Alabama as a state? How is that going to help our citizens, what they have done?
And the governor came out and said, these people do not speak for all Alabama. And we'll get to the other huge story, the location of Space Force, in a little while. She caught more hell for saying that about these guys than she has about any other subject, the response to the COVID, anything.
Well, I'll tell you right now, when your governor says these people don't speak for the state of Alabama, holy Christ, they are the elected officials by the state of Alabama. They most certainly speak for the state of Alabama. They were elected to do so.
Number one in football, number one in political corruption, number one in political ignorance.
Well, let's just call them dunce caps. I think that's what they're supposed to be.
They are.
So, turns out the fella turned himself in that was strolling through the Capitol with the Confederate battle flag, the dipshit. And of course, he's from Delaware.
Delaware.
And
that's not him, by the way. There was no segue. That's not him, by the way.
Okay. I'm sure not. And it led to the death of this good man.
Jesus.
And so National Public Radio wants to know, why didn't the FBI and Department of Homeland Security produce a threat report ahead of the Capitol insurrection?
They did.
Real damn good question.
They did. There was an FBI report released a week before the election that warned of an uprising and of very likely malicious intent of rioters and a security threat. It was ignored. Absolutely ignored. It was put into an outbox tray in every place in the White House because, like I said, I'm going to say this now so you can say you heard it here first. There are going to be sweeping indictments coming from all the houses and all the chambers of the U.S. Capitol within the next 6 months. And you are going to find out exactly who the co-conspirators were who planned and orchestrated this attack on the Capitol.
Okay, well, that's one story, and that's what I'm getting into, what the allegations are and what we think we know. The allegations are there were reconnaissance tours given by some of these congressmen to people who ended up illegally entering the Capitol building a day later, that panic buttons were disabled in certain congressional offices. You know, were there conspirators? The FBI says we'll be shocked. That was before yesterday.
Yeah. Wait till that comes out.
So, and we kind of got into this a little before. White nationalists or people in the cult of Donald Trump, he has called all who will come to his ranks, white nationalists or otherwise, and other radical rancor, which most decent people in this country do not care to associate, to say that everyone participated in the rally January 6th fits this mold as reckless and false. But some appear to have been white nationalists and have stated so. So that was a mouthful. Do you think people gave recon tours or were involved, Raines? I mean, that's your
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that there are members of Congress who are active co-conspirators to the attack that happened.
I agree.
There are members
I don't have enough information.
There are members of congressional staff that were active co-conspirators. There were members of the Capitol Police Force. There were members, I'm going to say this, there were members of the Secret Service who were active conspirators. And this is all going to come out. It is going to be deep, and the cast net is going to be wide. I'm here to tell you, and a lot of people are going to get caught up in this. You cannot be arrested and prosecuted for being a white nationalist in this country. It's simply, there's no mechanism for it.
True.
So I don't care for the label. If you were a co-conspirator in creating a logistic footprint for this is how we're going to make this riot happen, they are coming for you. And I think you are all going to be incredibly shocked. Not all of us, but a lot of you are going to be incredibly shocked to see exactly how high up it goes. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not one to spout conspiracy theories, so I'm not going to sit here and promulgate all these unnamed things. I'm just going to tell you, don't be surprised. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from all of this, is that when people are asked, what do you think about what you saw on the 6th? Well, I wasn't surprised.
Yep.
So there was an article this week that a software program with ties to the state of Alabama, Clearview AI, has been used by federal law enforcement to use their facial recognition software to identify all of the people who were captured on film in the Capitol building. And I've told you about this before, that all of the images were illegally obtained by the company. They knew they wouldn't be able to market it without being sued. So their only client are governmental law enforcement agencies.
Well,
in the meantime, go ahead,
I
Randy.
said it before and I'll say it again. I'm against it. I don't like it. I don't like Big Brother surveillance. The majority of what you're going to see come out of this, is not that an AI system and facial recognition led to the amount of arrests. It's the stupidity of the perpetrators who did not cover their tracks and who brazenly posted on social media about their accomplishments is what's going to lead to all the arrests.
Take pictures of themselves.
I'm against the AI because I don't think in this country there needs to be facial recognition software. The citizens of this country are stupid enough to do it of their own volition.
Right out there in the open. So in the meantime, 93,363,000 confirmed cases of SARS CoV-2 with, I mean, we could wait a few minutes so we can say 2 million deaths. Can we go ahead and call it, Raines?
Yeah, I believe we could reasonably probably call it, but by the time the slide got made to now, it's probably up around 2 million.
So 23,337,000 infections in the United States with 309,000 deaths. Alabama, 417,000 cases with 6,000 deaths, and we are officially over the 4,000 infection a day mark. We do have something new on the Alabama COVID-19 dashboard hub. They're showing us exactly how many vaccinations have been allocated to Alabama. That's 271,925, and of those, we've gotten 87,000 into people's bodies.
I've got to say that's a marked improvement from last week.
It's still
low, but it's a marked improvement. I've got to say,
and I think you're going to see a big jump here in the next couple of weeks for sure.
Well, you're going to see a big jump, all right, because Super Corona is spreading all over the country. And Raines, I didn't really understand. Twitter shut down the Sputnik 5 information handle.
That's correct.
And was that because they were saying things that weren't verifiable about their vaccine?
That's because the people in charge of the social media for Gamaleya are presenting science that has not been fully peer reviewed. That is the very definition of, to me and to most rational and scientific thinkers, the definition of misinformation. That's if your science has not been properly peer reviewed, it's not science, it's opinion. And that's why Twitter took that, especially when it comes to something involving life and death. That's the same thing. If I started a Twitter account and said, I have come up with a cure for cancer, and I'm offering it to everyone who's willing to take it, my science says that I've mixed these chemicals and it's produced an efficacy rate of 99% to be effective against all known cancerous cells. Well, if that science is not peer reviewed, that's just opinion, and it can be considered dangerous. So that's why it's been taken off.
So let's ease into the terms of service, all the free speech hell that's being raised right now. So, as a matter of fact, the President of the United States decided to use a private platform with which to communicate with the American people, not using the normal channels, going through a press secretary, and Twitter, after the insurrection that happened January 6th, shut down his account. And also Amazon, who was the platform that was hosting the Parler app and social media websites, shut them down. And I have been reading the pleadings in that case. It's been very interesting. And I think Amazon has the high ground here. What do you think?
Absolutely agreed. They are private companies doing what private companies are allowed to do in this great nation. I'm not surprised, nor am I shocked that the overwhelming majority of Americans don't understand the First Amendment. It's just something they like to throw up there. We learned, or should have learned, the most about this during the great Phil Roberts debacle. When Phil Roberts, the family patriarch of the Duck Dynasty clan, got into a lot of trouble for saying a lot of really awful things, and he got dropped by social media and other things that people said, well, infringing his First Amendment. No, sir. You should have learned then. If you learned then, you would understand now that a company can do whatever it wants. There are no First Amendments when it comes to corporations. There are no Second, Third, Fourth, or Fifth Amendments when it comes to corporation. The Bill of Rights applies to the United States government. If you are standing on the National Mall holding a sign that says, "I hate the government," they can't send the FBI to take your sign away and arrest you for protesting the United States government. That is the First Amendment. That's it. If you are an employee of Harry Still law firm, and you go and hold up a sign in in Montgomery that says "fuck the Auburn Tigers," they can't arrest you for holding up that sign, but by God, Harry Still can sure as shit fire you from Harry Still law firm for holding up a sign that says "fuck the Auburn Tigers."
Okay, so I want to lay out a little bit about Section 230, 47 U.S.C. Section 230, a provision of the Communications Decency Act. So this was actually an act that was anti-free speech. It defined what decency was on the internet. Now, that's a low-ass bar as far as I'm concerned. But the applicable provision says that no provider or user of any interactive computer service shall be treated as a publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. So just because they have the platform, they're not responsible for what you publish on that platform. They can't be held liable for it.
Do you remember why that was? Do you remember why that law was passed?
Well, there's lots of. I know why I was told it was passed to provide,
to stop human trafficking. Okay. To stop human trafficking. That was the magic carpet that they sat on to get that law pushed through Congress, is that it was going to help stop human trafficking. And that's when those purveyors of such things, that's when the adult section of Craigslist got taken down. That's when Backpage got muzzled. And that was the magic carpet they rode for that law to be passed. Now, if you think that that's the only reason they did it, you might be a bit misguided and less far thinking than we thought.
No doubt. So the big story number 5 of the week. Biden came out with a $1.9 trillion relief plan. Includes stimulus checks, unemployment support, and more. Direct payments of an additional $1,400 to most Americans, bringing the total relief to $2,000. Increase the federal per week unemployment benefit to $400 and extend it through September. Increase the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Extending the eviction and foreclosure moratorium until the end of September. $350 billion in state and local aid, $170 billion for K through 12 and institutions of higher learning, $50 billion towards COVID-19 testing, $20 billion towards national vaccine programs and partnerships with state, localities, and tribes, and making the child tax credit fully refundable for the year and increasing the credit to $3,000 per child or $3,600 for a child under the age of 6.
Harry, is the go back to that, extending the extending the eviction and foreclosure moratoriums until the end of September 2021?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
What was it?
It expired on January 1st.
Yeah.
Oh, and wow, that's quite an extension. Now,
actually, no, I apologize. It expired on December 29th, actually.
Okay, so if there's any of you out there that disagree with, big spending and you're still buying into the whole thing, you can take your $1,400 that you're going to get and send it back in protest.
Well, before you move on that slide, there's something I need to slide in there. See what I did there? there is something that has been very delicately, surgically implanted into that third bullet point, increasing the federal minimum wage to $15 per hour.
Right.
There's something that was kind of just slid in there very, very keenly. It ends the minimum wage tip credit. For those of you not familiar with the service industry, a restaurant or bar or any business where employees operate with gratuity as part of their income has been allowed to calculate prospective gratuity into the minimum wage, which means here in Texas, if you work at a restaurant, the minimum wage is $2.15 per hour. The tip credit adjusts for that, where the tips that you make bring you up to the federally mandated minimum wage. That is how restaurants have been able to stay in business for the last half century. It is unfair, it's horrific, and has led to the absolute denigration of everyone in the service industry for the last 5 decades. And I am applauding that this stimulus act will get rid of that. Every national restaurant chain is very likely going out of business. Thank God, because it's been so long that you have been mistreating your people, that you have been taking advantage of people in the service industry, paying them a substandard wage and expecting the entitled American to make up for that wage through gratuity. This will increase the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. And by God, it's deserved and earned. And any of you assholes out there that love to post on social media about how you didn't get pickles on your burger when you asked for extra pickles, and that's why they deserve $15 an hour, you're damned right. You're damned right.
Big story number 7, Bammer Space Force headquarters. All we know is we know rockets.
I don't understand why Huntsville was not the first choice for the U.S. Space Command. I really don't. I am a space head. I am an absolute lover of all things U.S. space program. Why wasn't it? It is the number one. I mean, if you understand the logistics of how NASA works and how different stations have different purposes, I said, okay, great. They're going to be headquartered in Huntsville because that's where the operational part of the space program is. Nope, we're putting it in Colorado. Okay, well, who's in charge of this?
I can answer that, Raines. I can tell you I can absolutely give you the answer of why it was not located there.
Tell me why, Paul.
Because it's in Alabama. Because it's in Alabama. I'm telling you, man, I'm serious. You imagine being outside politicians or business people, and you're coming to Alabama and dealing with what you are seeing now. That's big, man. They look at it and say, no, I ain't going to deal with them. The hell with this, you know? Because you're right. That is where it should have been.
No doubt. And we'll see if this sticks. I mean, who knows if Biden's going to executive order say the Space Force.
Right.
No, I don't think so. I think the Space Force is here to stay. I don't think it's going to get the funding that it got under the Trump administration. I believe it will be definitely scaled back. But, buddy, if you understand the space program and if you understand how money works in the U.S. space program, you'll understand that we need the United States Space Force because we need there to be another page or two in the defense budget for us to creatively move money around.
Right.
Especially to Alabama. And Richard Shelby, to his credit, did not participate in actions as others did January 6th.
Do you know why?
He warned them not to participate.
Exactly.
Do you know why Richard Shelby was able to possess the wisdom? Because he remembers the hard days of Reconstruction. As a young man, having to struggle under the yoke of the federal occupiers as a teenager
until 1877. But he's bringing home the bacon, man. Space Command. You got to get credit.
He absolutely is bringing home the bacon. But I mean, that's what surprised me is when you have a senior senator like Richard Shelby, and he's telling the junior senator and the newly elected congressman, hey, don't get involved in this, back off. And they don't even listen to him. I mean, it just makes you wonder what in the world is going on. You would think that he would have some influence over them, but obviously not. And he's standing on top of the hill. Now they're at the bottom of the hill.
I swear, whenever I read and see things about Richard Shelby, I have to hearken back to one of my early political heroes, John Stennis.
Oh, yeah.
John Stennis, I believe, is the first Southerner to use the actual face palm. John C. Stennis was a lion of the U.S. Congress, a congressman from Mississippi, and he'd been there long enough to know that whenever these people stand up and say dumb things that are going to bite them in the ass 10 years down the road, I guarantee you he's the one who invented and did that on the congressional floor more often than just about anybody.
So in making the announcement, Governor Ivey in her tweet thanked Doug Jones and Richard Shelby.
What does that tell you?
Thought that was pretty good. I don't want anybody to remember to forget this guy, especially the next time you walk into
Ice Age Mo Brooks.
So it turns out this timeline is going to go down in infamy. We're going to keep showing it. We were just showing it as significant dates in the electoral timeline. January 6th was a hootenanny, and January 20th, who knows? But it's kind of like Ron White said, I didn't know how many of them it was going to take to whip my ass, but I knew there's going to be 21,000 soldiers there.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you what.
I didn't know how many of them it'd take to whoop my ass, but I knew how many they was.
I'll take anyone's bet that no one's that they don't want to is going to get anywhere within a damn mile of the Capitol.
Yes, I can say with pretty much certainty that we are going to have an inauguration on the 20th, and that is going to happen regardless of whether it is under fire or under light artillery support. President-elect Joe Biden is going to take the oath at noon on the 20th.
Right, and as far as the state capitals go, our governor could save a lot of time and energy, highway patrol, guard, and everything. Just put a platoon of Marines right there at the front door and tell them no one's going to enter, and you can go home that night and go to sleep.
Now, that's a fact. If you want it done, put Marines around it. That's
Paul. I'm going the Pollyanna route on this thing. I don't think any buildings are going to be attacked, any state or any of that kind of stuff. I just don't. I think it's a bunch of bull. I think it's a bunch of dipshits on the internet.
I think you might see one or two wackos, but I don't see anything else either. I'm hoping that after the 20th, everybody can kind of take a deep breath and let's try to at least get on the same damn page for the benefit of all of us.
There's going to be things happen. The 17th, the 18th, the 19th, and the 20th. There are going to be things happen because when things get this extreme, when the cultists take the front row, stupidity is going to create problems. I can guarantee that. You are going to see
idiots get together. They're Katie bar the door, but I just don't think people are going to waste their time or energy to go to D.C. or to go to a state capitol. In the meantime, the Alabama Crimson Tide won the national championship again. I mean,
that'll be 15.
Do you know who the most powerful Democrat is in the state of Alabama?
Nick Saban.
Nick Saban. You're looking at him.
Right.
Wanted to show everybody our Twitter handle so they can keep up with us when we are not on producing new content. You can keep up with us from time to time. And I wanted to point you to this Facebook page, which we're going to go into right now. Justice for Jonathan Victor. Jonathan Victor was a young man who lost his life here in Baldwin County at the hands of a Baldwin County Sheriff's deputy. And so, Paul, I don't know exactly how you want to break this one down. Would you like?
Well, first of all, let me tell our listeners that, you know, we go into these articles and we're dissecting the article. We can't read the whole article. So we encourage you to get Lagniappe either online or free where it's circulated through Baldwin County and Mobile. And this particular Lagniappe has several very good articles in it. The cover story is Behind the Scenes, New Evidence Emerges in the Deadly Baldwin County Sheriff's Office Shooting of an Unarmed Man, Gay Times. Now, Jonathan Victor was the victim. This happened May 12th of 2017. And Mr. Victor drove off the side of the road on I-10. Subsequently, at first it came in as a call for assistance. And then all of a sudden it escalated to him having a weapon, not having a weapon. Did we see it? Did we not see it? And before I get too far into this, I want to make sure that the police and sheriff's departments and all of them don't look at this as a bashing of their departments. This is what should be corrected in your departments, and you know it.
We all know it.
We all know it. Now, this is result. The guy was disoriented, didn't know exactly what was wrong with him. The citizen tried to help him to get out of the car and everything, couldn't assist him. Ambulance showed up, fire truck showed up.
And this is in the median Interstate 10 in Baldwin County.
Correct. And the traffic is stopped and everything else. He's talking to himself in the car. He locks himself in the car. He's acting irrationally. And then an officer comes on the scene demanding him to get out immediately and starts prodding him to get out, show your hands, etc. The end result is that Mr. Victor was only 7 yards, that's 21 feet, before he was shot 4 times holding a fanny pack. Now, here's where I want to make sure that anyone that carries a firearm, anyone, police or not, you tell me any course that you went through handling a weapon where the first thing they told you was, do not shoot until you see what you're shooting at. Now, they couldn't see if he shot this man 4 times within 7 yards holding a fanny pack. He did not have a gun. He did not see a gun. A gun was not pointed at him. Now, this is in federal court, and you can be sure that that this is really gonna this is gonna set the sheriff's department's back. And one particular thing that was mentioned in here that I want to read, and it says, for his part, Sheriff Mike told Tenenbaum is the attorney for Jonathan Victor's family, that at the time, Baldwin County Sheriff's Office had no crisis intervention team, and deputies had not specifically been trained in de-escalation techniques. But both the Baldwin County Sheriff's Office and the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency's Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission's programs have elements covering barricaded subjects and the use of deadly force. The Baldwin County Sheriff's Office Standard Operating Procedure Number 1 covers the use of force, advising officers to, quote, use the least amount of force necessary to render the situation safe, close quotes. There was also separate training to deal with someone suffering from mental distress or potential suicide. Mr. Victor had no criminal past, but he had been diagnosed with depression. Now, this is very concerning. However, let's look back at, this was May 12th, 2017. Now, on March 5th, 2018 is when Robert Yates, this was a lawsuit filed against Baldwin County deputies over the deadly 2018 eviction by Gabe Times. This is Lanyap as well. And this was Robert Yates, who was being served an eviction. He fires one round in the air, goes in the, first he's being evicted from his house. They knew who he was. They knew that he had mental issues as well. They refused to let any of the family become involved in trying to talk it down. They just proceeded, ending up putting 114 rounds through the trailer, completely demolishing it and killing the man. And he had also been diagnosed with depression. Now, that's the second case, okay? That's 1 year from the 17. Then in April 1st, 2019 is when we have the Baldwin County Sheriff's Department chasing a man the wrong way down I-10, winds up killing 5 people. This is 2020, folks. Are you telling me that in 2017 that we do not have de-escalation tactics? I mean, give me a break. So get the Lanyap, read the whole story, and I can assure you, you're going to hear a lot more about that. But let's segue into the other thing too, Harry. And that Lanyap has sought to obtain access to the body camera and video footage from the scene, but has been denied. The newspaper argued before the Alabama Supreme Court this past summer for the release of the public records and are still awaiting the Supreme Court. Same exact thing in the Yates case.
Okay, Paul, you missed all the important stuff.
Well, there's too much in here. That's what I'm saying. How in the hell can I read it all? It's 2 pages. It's a cover story, folks. You've got to read it.
So after Corporal Matthew Hunniday shot the man's thumb off, then shot him in the hip, then shot him in the femoral artery, and then shot him in the guts with an AR from 7 yards, there was a civilian at the scene. He was the first person to arrive, a Donald Allenbaum, a flea market vendor who was returning home from Mobile when he saw Victor's car stuck in the mud and shooting a rooster tail up. He spoke with the family's investigator and told them that, I saw him with something in his hand, but I could tell it was a cell phone because I could see the charger hanging out. So it turns out that the sheriff's department went back to this witness on December 29th and got him to sign a statement, even though he's illiterate, saying that he had something in his hand and it could have been a gun. And the other important thing to realize that came out of this article when they were speaking with Corporal Hunniday, who pulled the trigger. Do you recall that statement, Paul? That they asked him, what all weapons did you have at your disposal? Well, I had a sidearm, a shotgun, a taser, and an AR. And they said, why'd you grab the AR? And he said, well, it came out over dispatch that this was a 1033 suspect with a firearm. So think about all of these failures and how having a non-lethal solution could have solved all these problems. Beanbag shotgun, whatever.
Right.
Taser shotgun.
Well, the other interesting fact, too, was that Hunniday was 25 miles away from the scene when he first gets the call. And with him was Deputy Eric Von Bergen, a recent hire who had since left the department. Okay, well, at the point during the investigation, at least 2 witnesses gave statements indicating that they were certain Victor did not have a gun or a weapon in his hand when he emerged from the vehicle. According to Tannenbaum's line of questioning, Deputy Van Bergen said he saw Victor with a black bag in his hand. Okay. And one of the firefighters made the comment that Hanaday was wide-eyed, acting irrationally, talking to himself, and had basically cut off contact with them as they were trying to provide help.
Victor, not Hanaday.
Victor. These two cases, the one with Jonathan Victor and Robert Yates, run so parallel. I'm not going to be surprised if you don't see them in the same courtroom.
So, Paul, guess who led the investigation?
Baldwin County Sheriff's Department, probably.
Baldwin County Major Crimes Unit, and they said the Gulf Shores Police Chief was the task force director under the Major Crimes Unit. Now, I still don't know what the hell a Major Crimes Unit is, because I haven't seen any enabling legislation to say it's anything other than a figment of the sheriff's imagination.
No accountability and no transparency. Two words you hear every single politician use. And Hoss Mack is the biggest politician in Baldwin County.
So the Lagniappe has been trying to get their hands on these, all of the body camera footage, all of the dispatch records, and they have been stymied. It's in the Supreme Court. They went and made arguments back in September, and we still don't have a ruling. Right now, House Bill 6 is proposed, and it establishes a procedure as to whom and when law enforcement must disclose a copy or release a copy of a videotape, a body cam or dash cam or whatever. And the kicker in all this is the only person that the law enforcement agency has to turn this record over to is the person whose image or voice is in the recording. There's not one provision in here for the press, Raines.
I see that. And I'm interested in the language where it says, who are they going to turn this footage over to by this bill? Victor?
Or his personal representative. So the interesting thing there is, you would have to go open an estate somewhere and be the actual personal representative.
I was going to say, yeah, you can't just turn it over to the lawyer. You can't just turn it over to his mama. There has to be an estate.
That's right.
And you think that guy's family created an estate for him?
An expense to go to do that. So then after that, if they decide not to give it to you and you have to sue them, there's a list of people that you have to serve, the district attorney being one of them. And then it tells the court exactly what it can consider in the request. And then at the end of all of it, if they've done everything they can and you've spent $20,000 on attorney's fees trying to get your hands on a video that shows your loved one being killed, you can't get attorney's fees. You can't recover attorney's fees.
That's right.
So here's
the worst bill that I've ever seen.
It really is. It's a cloak. It's a dark cloak thrown over every body cam in the state.
Well, we have talked to a former legislator that has indicated that it would never pass, so we're going to pray the same thing. But from a consumer standpoint, those of you that may not go to these council meetings or county commission meetings, if you've ever been there when the sheriff's department's there and they're asking, or the local municipal Fairhope or something, and they're putting body cameras on people, you're talking about tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's taxpayer dollars buying the cameras, and now they're telling you that you can't see what's on those cameras that you bought.
Unless you're the person that was shot.
Right.
Then you'd have standing to ask for it.
Well, I want my money back. I don't want to buy any cameras if that's the case.
The other bill of ridiculous intent is, under existing law, when a person is found guilty of committing a misdemeanor or felony and is shown beyond a reasonable doubt that the commission of the crime was motivated by the victim's race, color, religion, national origin, ethnicity, or physical or mental disability, the person is subject to heightened criminal penalties. This bill would provide that when a person is found guilty of committing a misdemeanor or felony against a law enforcement officer, and it is shown beyond a reasonable doubt that the commission of the crime was motivated by the victim's employment as a law enforcement officer, the person is subject to heightened criminal penalties. a little bit of vomit just came up in the back of my mouth.
Yeah.
Like when a cop gets assaulted, that person's not immediately arrested and punished.
You want to go on to more Lagniappe?
Yes, sir, please.
Rob Holbert, the publisher, wrote an article, To Believe It or Not. Of course, it is about January 6th. And one thing he says is, if anything could have made Wednesday's lawlessness even more disappointing, it was seeing both Senator Tommy Tuberville and Representative Jerry Carl support this ridiculousness with their first official votes, especially after watching Trump incite his followers to riot. Representative Mo Brooks not only led the charge to challenge the electors, his speech to gathered protesters Wednesday was out of control, totally irresponsible, and I will add, incited the crowd. So get copy there of Rob's article. One of the other articles in there, of course, is Enough is Enough. Ashley Trice's comments on what happened January 6th. Now What by Jeff Poor, the Beltway Beat. All of those are about January 6th, which is going to go down in infamy. I can assure you of that. Thought there was one other in here. Oh, I know what it was. It was the Fairhope one. Just like, I tell you, if I had a crystal ball, I could get paid for my services. Be sure if you live in Fairhope to get the copy of Reining It In. Fairhope proposes revisions to the drastic park proposal. Remember the waterfront project, $6.2 million that we got from the Restore Act? Took us years to get the money. We finally get the money. We give it to architects. We spent another 9 months speaking to people, getting everything straight, getting feedback from everyone. During the whole time, the city council did nothing. They sat on their ass and never said a word. And then 2 or 3 weeks before the election, it became a election issue. So, and the former mayor, Wilson, said that the bluff stabilization portion of the proposal would have to stay intact because it was the crux of the federal grant money. This is federal grant money. Now, on the bluff, we're not doing anything we previously talked about to provide slopes, bathrooms, viewing area, or amphitheater. Instead, the new plan simply calls for bringing existing stairs up to code, which are not ADA, and providing an ADA compliant ramp. Well, I tell you, I hope whoever's got a wheelchair has got brakes on that ramp, because I don't know how that's going to work to get to the bottom. But anyway, in the very beginning, people, there was an overwhelming number of people that wanted the beach, and they also wanted the rock jetty. Now, the rock jetty served 2 purposes. Number one, it was to protect the shoreline, which has been damaged. Every single storm we have, we're doing that, okay? Up at the Grand, just recently, we went through 2 hurricanes. The whole beach at the Grand and the front buildings and the front floor were all spared because they had that jetty. But now they don't want to put the jetty in. They're going to go back to just redoing the old seawall the way it is. And Fairhope is losing the opportunity to really, really upgrade a particular destination in town that really would have put it much more on the map than just putting a Band-Aid on it, because you can tell now that all they're going to do is maintenance and satisfy a very few people that live right down there that don't want tourists there. They don't walk around traffic. They don't want the pier to be used. So that's what's going to happen. And this is going to be, thank you, Jack Burrell, the great negotiator. We're going to come back on the subject as well, because I put in a FOIA request to the city of Fairhope, and they just got it back to me. It cost, I think it was $86. It's pretty thick, so I'm going to go through and read all of the comments and everything because I know they're not going to jive with what they're coming up with. These differences here are just a few people or council people saying, well, we want this or we want that, and disregarding the general population. Be sure to get your lanyard. It's also got a lot of other information in it. And got any tips on anything else that's going on, let us know.
I've got a quick little point to make based on something Paul said. And this is just a side, and this is my opinion. There is a distinct difference between compliance with the American Disabilities Act and empathy and understanding with the American with Disabilities Act. If you know somebody that has cancer, you don't count on them to get out and do cancer research and find a cure. Don't leave it up to people with disabilities to fight for compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. I've attended countless municipal, county, and federal meetings about portions of the ADA that need to be enforced. Compliance with the ADA is not always empathy and understanding with the ADA, and I'll use Paul's ramp example as the primary for that. Just because it meets the standard does not mean that there is empathy or understanding involved for people with disabilities when it comes to public access in public spaces, especially municipally funded ones. Pay attention, keep an eye on that kind of thing. Don't make the people in wheelchairs fight for the things that they need. You should be out there and raise hell about it.
Well, I tell you, Raines, I'm glad you brought that up that much more. I know an Iraq veteran. He's in a wheelchair, on and off in a wheelchair. And I can assure you, he and a couple of his buddies are watching this thing at Fairhope, because there's no way you can get down to the bottom unless you get to the bottom in a car. And you can just go around the park. You can't go up or anything. So I wouldn't be surprised if Fairhope doesn't get itself in a position of being sued over the ADA thing in the long run with this, the way they're screwing this whole thing up. And it's really, really a shame, because what they had down there that they were proposing to do would have done nothing but enhance it. And then they got so sidetracked with this complete BS about preserving the bluffs. And anybody with a grain of sense or looked into the history of Fairhope knows that those bluffs, so to speak, are the remnants of what was bulldozed away to make the lower park. It's just ridiculous. The whole thing is. But like I said, it's a bunch of selfish people that live up there very close to the park. They do not want tourists, and they do not want any more traffic than they have to have. And the majority of Fairhope is sound asleep.
Well said, Bo.
All right, so I want to continue Raines' feud with Navy SEAL and Texas U.S. House of Representative member Dan Crenshaw. Have you heard this, Raines? Just gonna have to listen to it, okay?
Congress, many want to vote from home or by proxy. If you think that's leadership, then I would encourage you to rethink what it means to be a representative. If we are to survive this historic crisis, we might collectively stiffen our spines and demonstrate to the American people what that looks like.
You know what he's talking about?
Yes, sir. Spoken by the same man who voted for the impeachment trial by proxy.
Exactly. And I have one more tidbit for you, and I'm sure Raines knows the answer. We're going to play a little Jeopardy. The use of violence for political ends.
What is domestic terrorism?
It's the definition of terrorism, the use of violence or the threat of violence for political ends. So, and I don't know if it's a threat or if he's just trying to warn everybody, but Lindsey Graham came out and said, if you continue in the Senate with the impeachment of the president, you're going to have a bunch of trouble on your hands. So does that mean we shouldn't do it because Lindsey Graham says we're going to have a bunch of trouble on our hands, or should we do it because we should.
No, what you should do first is the next thing you should do is look up the definition of sedition. And then you should think very carefully before you do anything next.
I'll take things no one with any sense is going to do for 2000, Alex.
I agree with you though, Range. I don't buy into there being this disruption all over the United States and this and that happening and everything. Anybody that goes up to Washington wants to go to the Capitol is an absolute, complete, insane person. Just, put them away or do something because they don't know what's going on. It's just not going to happen. And like you said, once everybody starts seeing remember what the FBI said, you're going to be shocked when things come out about everything that happened. Show that again, Harry, so everybody can go to that.
Too late.
Yeah, all right.
The one thing that I would, and I don't think I think this is a public page, right?
Not sure.
I don't see anything on this page about any of the insurrection. I don't see anything on this page about the federal officer that was killed. Nothing. And this is going all the way back to December 22nd. Looks like a bunch of news from Christmas collecting stuff and people being promoted. Anyway.
And that's pretty telling. That's pretty telling too, Harry, because Hoss Mack's a very, very good politician, and he usually chimes in on everything. Remember, he didn't want to uphold the mask.
Hadn't heard a thing about MAGA. Hadn't heard a thing about a federal police officer being killed.
No. Go to Justice for Jonathan Victor's Facebook page and chime in, and also please read the article in Lanyap. And if you can, let the sheriff's department know that they need to get up to date on standards. We talked about that swapper thing and everything, Harry, and this goes right to it. Training.
Yesterday, Mr. Ripp and I went to Montgomery and had a productive meeting, I felt, with the Public Service Commission people. Not so productive at the pardons and paroles, but and got some real direction. So those of you fighting Baldwin County Sewer Service out there, the fight's not over.
Yep, we were able to go to the Veterans Administration where I got some information as well. And then, if nothing else, I went down there and burned a bunch of hot air in the Ethics Commission, which got
wasted moments of your life speaking to people at the Ethics Commission.
Ethics Commission. What's funny is if you are in a group or if you're in a city hall or something and there's a meeting going on and somebody brings up the Ethics Commission, everybody starts laughing.
Rightly so.
Yep.
We could do a whole stand-up routine where it's nothing but, one-liners.
For days.
All right, guys. Range, you got anything else of import?
I've got a quick thing that I want to talk about, and that is journalism. A quick prop to give you all some bona fide. I was a journalist at one point. I was an award-winning journalist at one point, and the only news award I have that survived Katrina is this AP award for investigative journalism that I got along with a writer named Matt Wilson and I many moons ago. So I've got a little bit of background in that, and I've got to say two things. One, I've got nothing but absolute mad respect for Gabe Tynes and the work he's doing right now in this shooting case. That is not work without consequence. He is putting himself at risk as a journalist in this country. In the current media landscape, he is literally standing on a cliff and pointing fingers and shining light where it needs to be shown. And I have nothing but respect for that young man, and he is an incredible reporter. And I will also call your attention to one of the things that you learn in journalism school is how to write what's called a lead, L-E-D-E. And that's the beginning of a story, how to bring someone into a story. And this week, one of the greatest leads I have ever read in the history of journalism was written by a reporter in the Tampa Bay Times. All right. A reporter named Christopher Spada. And I'm going to read you this lead. Audrey Ann Southard spent years helping kids find their creative voices and strengthening her own. The Spring Hill vocal coach and piano teacher sang like an angel when she posted videos of herself crooning Norah Jones' Don't Know Why, or belting out Memory from Cats. And when she went to Sicily in 2012 for an international music competition, she won. That led to a showcase on a stage inside New York's Carnegie Hall. More recently, Southard used her powerful soprano to scream at police officers that they should tell fucking Pelosi we're coming for her. Fucking traitorous cunts, we're coming. We're coming for all of you. She was part of the mob that stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. That is amazing writing. And like our friend Gabe Tynes, these reporters and journalists are putting their necks out there to do their jobs that they've been doing since time immemorial to bring you the truth of what's happening in this country, in your state, and in your hometown. They are not the enemy of the state. They are professionals who represent the fourth estate in this country. And they do courageous jobs to bring and shine light on things that fester in the darkness.
And they have legal protections under the law because of the necessity for what they do.
Well, I want to reiterate exactly what Range is saying, because it's not only been this article. Gabe has really busted out some fantastic articles. The one about Judge Stankowski, Judge Norton, all of these cases that are being talked about. They're out there for you to read. If you don't do anything about them, that's why we have the problems that we have. And in saying that, you know, to me, when I was in diving, a professional diver is somebody that makes a living at diving. A journalist is someone who makes a living at journalism. I'm a blogger. I'm giving opinion pieces. I am not a journalist, and I don't pretend to be a journalist. I don't make my living that way. So, and I don't want to take credit away from people like Gabe Tynes and Lanyap. So keep that in mind as well, because everybody jumps my ass about being a journalist. I'm not a journalist.
Well, one last thing to add, and this story has moved since we began recording this podcast, but the investigators with the Capitol Police Force have opened an investigation into whether members of Congress inappropriately gave visitors access to the Capitol ahead of the storming. Those of you that remember, Lieutenant General Russell Honore, the hero of New Orleans, the man who saved the city after Hurricane Katrina, has been appointed by the Speaker of the House to lead a security review of the Capitol. There are 37 people being investigated in the killing of Officer Sicknick. I have been made to understand that 6 of those are members of Congress.
My God.
It begins, ladies and gentlemen.
Madness.
This is a federal
unprecedented
murder trial. This is a federal murder investigation. Members of Congress, now unnamed, but are part of that investigation.
And you're right, Rains. You watch I watch about 4 or 5 channels, and the news is changing like the wind in Belize. I mean, 4 or 5 times a day, new things are coming out, and this is coming out. And I can just imagine what we're going to know in 3 or 4 weeks from now.
Yes.
I'm out. I'm done, man.
So, Rains, they talk about inciting a riot, and you and I both tweeted about this. Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury in 1170, was killed by 4 Knights of the Realm. And would you let us in on the quote that's attributed to his death and who uttered it?
Who will rid me of this troublesome priest?
Henry
and that
II,
was King Henry II. That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
It resonates through time when we call for violence, and whether or not history is going to lay the responsibility on these legislators and the president. Stay tuned, boys and girls. It should be a lot of fun.
Podcast 67.
Bam.
All right, guys. Thanks for your time.
High-stepping turkeys, and you know what to say about a high stepper. No step too high for a high stepper.
I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea in the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by, and the wheels cake and the wind's song and the white sails shaking, and a grey mist on the sea's face, and a grey dawn breaking. I must go down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day, with the white clouds flying, and the flung spray, and the blown spume, and the seagulls crying. I must go down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way, where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover, and quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trick's over.